Welcome back to Ruffells Ad Break, brought to you by the good folk at Contented AI and Pegasus Bay Winery. In this episode, I have a chat with Mark Godenho, Head of Marketing at TASKA Prosthetics. We dive into his unconventional career journey from engineering to broadcasting to marketing, and how those shifts shaped his approach to brand building. We talk about the challenges of marketing in a highly specialised industry, the shift from mass media to targeted niche strategies, and what it takes to lead a team in today's fast-changing landscape. Plus, we touch on the balancing act between creativity, regulation, and ROI in an increasingly digital space. This is Ruffells Ad Break, and here's Mark Godenho.
Ruffells Ad Break.
There are all sorts of things that I know about you, but what I would like from you, please, is how would you introduce yourself? So what's the elevator pitch? Who's Mark Godenho?
You sent me through the questions, I looked at them and I went, yeah, that's cool. And now you're sitting here with the questions and I don't have the questions and you're relying on my memory. It's not great.
Well, this isn't really one of the questions. This is an introductory sort of a piece. It's a gambit. It's an opening gambit. So it's an opportunity for you to shine. But that was
I often say, my name's Mark Godenho. I'm a marketer. Mark the marketer. Clues in the name.
It's great. I mean, it's not great because
it's a bit average, isn't it?
Okay, so hold on. You're a graphic designer with what is that then? And why the default? Who are you?
I used to have lots of different elevator pitches, but my name's Mark. I'm a marketer. I have over 20 years experience working in design, advertising, marketing, both sides of the fence. And that's what I do. I really need to polish this up. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well, it's funny though. You get to a certain point though, and you do the work that you do, and that's kind of enough. Do we need to get better at caring a bit more about?
10 years ago, I was giving this advice to people. Here's how your elevator pitch. This is what you need to do. And then the last 5 years, I used to work as a consultant. And then the last 5 years, I've been working full-time as a marketer for one client, and I'm a little bit rusty on all that stuff.
Yeah, I'm pitching it. Yeah. And I think the world has changed a lot in those 5 years as well for the people's attention to, or the demands on people's attention has changed. So actually they have different requirements too. Well, let's start, if you will. Are you a normal man, Mark? Is it a childhood of happiness?
Am I a normal man?
Yeah. How did you grow up? What was life like? Were you competitive? Do you have brothers and sisters? Did you have a standard upbringing? And what is that?
I remember seeing a movie. It was a Disney movie, and there was a woman talking to a man, and in it she said, "You've got to have 4 children, because if you have 1 child, they'll be alone. If you have 2, they'll fight. If you have 3, the middle one will get left out, and if you have 4, they'll get on really well." Well, it was me and my sister, and so we fought a lot.
That's great, but what's the movie?
I have 3 kids now, and the middle one does get left out a lot. Sorry, George.
So Disney gave you all the advice you needed, but you didn't follow any of it.
We have a pretty normal growing up. I was born in Palmerston North, moved to Wellington till I was 21, and then have lived in Auckland, Wellington, Christchurch, and London in some combination for the last number of years. I was talking to my kids about this the other day. As a family growing up, we watched TV, but we watched TV as a family. Yep. And it was quite interesting because...
In what sort of way? This is sort of around dinner time or the news?
Dinner time. We'd watch the TV, we'd watch the news together, and then we'd watch Sale of the Century with Steve Parr, and then we'd probably watch some comedy shows or MacGyver and all that jazz. But we'd watch it together, and it really sort of occurred to me that, again, if you don't make an effort with the family, then everyone will go and do their own thing. The other day, I said, "Hey, let's watch TV," and I was watching TV alone because each of the kids were on a different screen in a different room of the house, as was the wife. It was like, okay, we're all on our own things now, doing our own things. It's so I'd like to try have a discipline of like, right, screens off, dinner time, we're all focused around here. Yeah, it's hard to find those traditional things again these days, I think.
Yeah, and how important is it? We do a thing where every single night, whenever we're in the house together, which is often, every single night we can, we have dinner at the table. There are no phones. There's nothing's on the table. And we sit down, we have dinner, and we talk to each other.
Yeah, that's
Talk
great.
to each other. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah. I think my biggest regret is at the moment we do that once a day. It's dinner time.
Yeah.
Growing up, we did it twice a day. We did it at breakfast as well. But breakfast is just chaos in the morning.
Yeah.
Everyone's running around.
Yeah. Getting lunch ready, getting the day ready.
Exactly.
Should have been done the night before, but nobody did it. Yeah.
Exactly. So it's good to do that at at night, at least once a day.
Eldest or youngest child?
I am the eldest.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And sister, do you get on well? Do you?
Yeah, all right. We
She's
get on right. Yeah, younger sister. Yeah.
Yep. Yep. And we're very.
She was the favourite. So.
She was the favourite.
Yeah, yeah. She's younger and more cute and had more hair, and she was lovely. You know. I
don't think you were born with less hair.
I was born. Yeah.
So what is that then? Because I guess what I'm trying to dig at is you've already given away that there are sort of some traditional elements which you quite like. Was that for the sake of structure? Was that because it was sort of the world order? You knew how things were going to be. You know, you like rules even though you like to bend them, or what is? How does that play out? What do you think? What do you think your childhood sort of threw in there?
I think everyone needs something to hold on to. Everyone needs a bit of discipline somewhere around the place. It's a bit like when you're being creative, the more rules you give yourself, the easier it is to be creative.
Yep.
If I were to give you a blank piece of paper and say, be creative, write something, do something, create something. Yep. People often struggle as to where do I begin, what do I write, what do I do? But if I say, use your left hand and a green pen and draw something that you saw on the way to work today that made you smile. You can do that. And I've done this exercise to a room full of people. You'll still get 30 different answers, but the more structure and the more restrictions you give yourself, the more creative you're likely to be. It doesn't appear that way on the surface, but boundaries and understanding a boundary enables you to be more creative because you know where to push.
Yep.
You know how far to push.
100%. Where did you start thinking about that? Where did you learn that?
It wasn't until I quit engineering school. Yep. I did a diploma in civil engineering and came down here to Canterbury to do the degree.
Yeah.
And
how old are you?
Early 20s.
Yep.
And I just didn't like it. I'd worked as an engineer, and I went back to do the degree, and it 300 level fluid mechanics and calculus. It's interesting. I don't mind it, but it just wasn't me. I wasn't in my flow. It was work.
When you say you'd worked as an engineer, do you mean a welder engineer, or do you?
No. I'd worked as a civil engineer, as a surveyor, designing retaining walls, designing beams for houses, and those sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I came down to do the degree to become a registered engineer because I was an engineering technician, if you like. I had an NZCE and then did another year doing a diploma, and thought that I wanted to go further. But then what I realised when I moved away from home is that I'm kind of doing this because my parents really pushed me into it, and it's okay. I like it. It's work. It's hard work, and I wasn't in my flow. I didn't, it didn't make me jump out of bed and go, oh, this is cool.
Yeah.
And then I went to broadcasting school and quit engineering, went to broadcasting school, and broadcasting school just opened up a world of opportunity for me because at broadcasting school you could be creative and you got paid to be creative, and there were disciplines in being creative, and I thought, and that was quite interesting.
That's quite a jump. That's quite a jump from engineering to broadcasting school.
It is. I was in Wellington, and I was doing my diploma, and as part of my diploma I was looking at foundations for transmission towers. And the reason that's interesting, it is interesting. The reason that is interesting is because most buildings have a foundation, and the foundation is designed to hold the building up. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, a transmission tower is vertical, and when the wind blows this way, you get what's called a shear force, and so the foundation has to hold the building down as well as holding it up. And I thought, well, you've got a different shape of the foundation. It has to be designed different. I thought that was quite interesting. Listen to me now. I realise how boring it sounds.
It's
but
it's
kind of interesting.
It is. It's great.
And that was what I was interested in. So I had to go to find out who made this transmission tower in Wellington. And I ended up going to a radio station and speaking to the people there and talking to the technicians and stuff. And while I was in the radio station, and I was working part-time as an engineer at the time, I just saw people walking around and they weren't dressed in suits and they were laughing and there was the radio playing in the background and people were having a good time. And I thought, what is this place? Because I was working at the engineering firm where people would be tutting if you got into work at 8:31 and everything was just a bit boring. You know, at 10:30 people would get up from their desks and go for a coffee break, and at 10:45 they well, we better get back to it, and they'll go back to their desks. And this was a place where people were wearing jeans and having fun.
Yeah.
And I was quite curious. And I applied for broadcasting school because I was kind of interested in school but didn't really pick up on it. Applied for broadcasting school, got in and didn't really look back.
Yeah. But then you started, I mean, you're not afraid of a microphone. You've started.
No. Well, that was the broadcasting thing that it taught me. I focused on, you had two optional subjects because of all the things you can do. I focused on creativity, as in copywriting, and voice. Yep. And I worked writing all the ads in Christchurch for a radio station called Channel Z. And my internship was done at what is now NZME, and would be writing 15 ads a day and for a variety of places. And it really taught you how to do copywriting, how to come up with ideas, and you had to be good.
Yeah.
And you
I was going to say, were they any good? Maybe not at first, or maybe. Do you remember any?
Yeah.
Any of those first few?
I remember some of the jingles. Yeah.
Go on.
One thing I thought that was quite interesting is that
one of the jingles,
by the time I did the $2 shop drum and bass jingle.
Which was?
It was. I found some drum and bass in the background, and then someone emceeing on the top, going just $2, just $2, get what you want for just $2. If it's in the shop, then it costs $2. All you need to spend is just $2, a gift for yourself, or a gift for your mum, or a gift for your family. Don't matter which one. $2 coin for 50-cent piece to $1 coin. Come cross release. $2, Christchurch massive, just $2. If it's in the shop, you can have some fun. You can spend $2 and have some.
That's great.
Please don't put that.
Absolutely going on. But I wish we had some more of that, some differentiation.
Yeah,
you know?
And so, but that was the thing. And you had to write an ad, and it had to be different. And all the sales reps would go down Morehouse Ave, and they would sell all the car yards. And so you'd get you've got your 13th car yard ad to do.
Yeah.
And you say to the rep, and you say to the client, what makes you different? And they say, we've got great service.
Cars are cheaper. Yes.
No, they don't even say that. They say, we've got great service. But what makes you different? We care about our customers. Well, what makes you different? We've got FPOS. Well, we're open on Sundays. What makes you different? We've got plenty of parking. And you've just got to you've got to really nail it, just try to get to the thing that makes them different. And once you focus in on that, you write the entire ad around that. And if they haven't got anything, then you've got to give them something.
Yeah. Yeah,
and
they have to adopt it, and then the user experience has to hopefully not fall
absolutely.
apart.
But each ad had to be completely different, and that discipline of writing 10 to 15 ads a day for 6 months, it burns you out. But at the same time, it's just using a creative part of your brain, which is just a muscle, like any other muscle that you need to work and hone, and exactly.
Yep. What about any horrors? Any horrors along the way, or this is just the start anyway?
This is the start. So I basically, and advice I'd give to anyone is just say yes to everything. Don't question it. Just if there's an opportunity coming up, yes. So I work Monday to Friday, writing ads and voicing ads. Saturday I would be doing promotion stuff, like driving around giving away giveaways, and doing crosses. Then on Sunday, from 6 a.m. to 11 a.m., I would read out the weather for Nelson, Blenheim, Christchurch, Dunedin, and Invercargill. And each one had there was a 30-second break, a 25-second break, a 40-second break, and a 20-second break. some combination thereof for each of those centres. And you got the weather facts and you had to read them out. But it taught me to talk to time.
Yep.
So I've got to fill 40 seconds,
Yep.
and all I know is that rain is coming this afternoon. That's all I know.
Yep.
Because the temperature hasn't come through yet. So I've got to fill that out. How do you do that? Microphone's on, you've got to record it. But
And you're doing that as live?
Pre-recorded, so you have a few chances to do it, which is good. But you got to pre-record it, you got to put it in the system, you got to add it in. But it was just saying yes to everything gets you, I think, everywhere, especially young and when you're early in your career.
Yep. So 6 months or so of writing copy, being in front of the microphone. Where next? Have you worked before this? Have you done sort of shitty part-time jobs, and you've worked in a supermarket stacking shelves and stuff like that? Did you have a?
I worked in a fish and chip shop.
Yeah, yeah.
And we had a big machine that had a grinder plate at the bottom, and you put potatoes in, and you put a hose in there, and it basically spat out peeled potatoes, but it couldn't get the eyes.
Oh, really?
So you had to take all the potatoes, and you sat there with the potato peeler, and you just had to just trim them off and just flick out the eyes. And I did that for ages, and I got paid $4 an hour. And then there was a risk that that was under the table, and then there was a risk that they were going to get taxed and audited. So suddenly I got a pay rise to $4.75, but still got $4 an hour, and did that for ages during high school.
Yeah. And how did you get that job? You just walked in?
I just walked in and said, kind of, any jobs going?
Yeah.
Cut the heck out of my fingers.
Yeah, I bet you did.
And then, but it was, had to do that.
Yep, great.
And then I had a job at Farmers in town in the lower menswear section. So
the lower menswear section?
Yeah, well, there was
the underwear?
Slightly,
or...
Yes, but there was a tiered section. So men's shirts and stuff were sort of on a couple of steps up, and in the lower menswear section were socks and undies and that sort of thing. And I worked there. I worked 10 till 4 on Saturday and 11 till 4 on Sunday. And I think my 10 till 4 Saturday job paid me $30 after tax, and with that, I would just go out and buy a CD.
Yep. You talk about it, and it's interesting because you remember the details. People generally in those sort of formative years, when you remember those details, and I know you're a detail guy, you love to have an interesting tidbit. But
tidbit or a titbit?
I think it's a tid.
I think it's a tid. What is a tid?
I don't know what a tid is.
Okay. Sorry, Karen.
No, that's right. I think it, but we're agreed. It's a tid.
It's a tid. Yep.
Yeah. TID. And that generally comes from somebody. I don't want to psychoanalyze this because I'm certainly not qualified, but somebody who's looking for something, right? So you're looking, in this case, maybe it's a means to buying yourself some music, which is, why were you not a musician at this point? Is it?
I was always into music, always played musical instruments and such, but at that age,
French horn.
No, it was clarinet. I wish I'd seen the bigger picture, and it wasn't until I'd worked at, I did an internship for 6 months, worked at Channel Z, again working 7 days a week because I just wanted to do everything and working on the radio and such.
Yeah.
So Monday to Friday writing ads, Saturday driving around giving out stuff, and then on Sunday I also did an afternoon shift on the radio. And then I got poached to go to the competition in Auckland, worked for 2 years there, won some awards, and then came back to...
Who is the competition at the
Oh, it was NZME. So I did my internship at NZME, went to work for Media Works, and then went back to NZME, and then back in Christchurch to announce on the radio. But it wasn't until I was, as an announcer, we're talking early 2000s now, on More FM, that I realised that was like, oh shit, I need to take control of this. It's not a question of just rolling with the punches and just seeing what kind of ends up. I can actually steer this a little bit. And I don't think I discovered that early enough in hindsight.
What was the moment? That you realised?
It was reading the book 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it changed everything. And I remember thinking it was quite a difficult book to get into. In hindsight, it's a very easy book, mildly preachy. But the first habit is be proactive, take charge, taking control.
But was it difficult because you hadn't been reading books like that previously, or because it was a bit too close to home? Or
I don't think I had, because books were, fiction. Who reads business books? Grown-ups read business books. I'm not a grown-up. you know. But then you read this book and it's like, yeah, it's a grown-up book, but it's actually quite interesting.
Yeah.
And it just changed everything. It just opened up. Maybe it had already been there, but I wasn't ready for it. But it had just opened everything up, and I just loved it. And it was just the side of, you know, be proactive, take charge. This is you. This is not a dress rehearsal. And that's something that like I say, I wish I'd discovered a bit earlier.
And then from there, where do you go? Because you've had a decent chunk of time now on radio and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, so when I was at More FM, I was doing the announcing during the day, but I was bored outside because there's only a finite amount of ways to say that was the Spice Girls. Up next is James Blunt.
Yep.
I wasn't really into the music. I was doing it. So what I did...
That sounds so grim. Oh, God, that sounds grim.
Well, this is the thing. On the radio, you think that you have license to say whatever you want. And, you know, you want one break an hour, you can, but it's very disciplined and it's very structured. You don't get to choose the music. Yeah. At the time, it was okay. I mean, I didn't start work till like midday, which was nice. But I was bored. I wasn't stimulated enough. So I carried on my freelance writing, and I ended up doing lecturing at Aorangi Polytech and Christchurch Polytech, which is now Aorangi. Ara, yeah. And ended up doing that for a bit, and then doing freelance copywriting because I was just a little bit bored and I wanted some more stimulation.
Yeah.
And then I ended up leaving, went to London.
Yep.
For a bit, and I was just turned 30.
Yep. What were you doing there?
I went there and I worked in radio because there was a guy that, again, used to work in radio, Kiwi guy, who had gone over there, and someone said, you got to get in touch with this guy. And he said, yep, give me a call when you're over. And so I did. And he said, cool, I've got a job for you either in Brighton or I've got a job for you in Newcastle. What do you want to do? And I thought, well, Brighton sounds good. Newcastle, the word was, how's your liver? Do you like drinking? If you do, come to Newcastle. I was like, don't mind drinking. Brighton sounds a bit more interesting. Yeah. It's by the sea, so I went to Brighton and worked as a copywriter there, and went back to London for a bit, and then ended up working at Eardrum, which is a radio-only specialised copywriting agency, and it's won more radio awards than anything else, founded by Ralph Van Dyke and Martin Sims, and those guys just are insanely good. They're still working in their discipline, and they are just smashing it out of the park. And I got a chance to work there, and that changed everything, because at that job it was brainstorming, but it was brainstorming taken to the next level, real proper brainstorming, and there was a real lack of ego, and there was a real we used to write ads the same way that they would write movie scripts, and that were TV scripts, where we'd have a client come in, they'd brief us. I go, okay, cool. And then we'd just sit around like this. There'd be 3 or 4 of us. And we'd just make each other laugh. At that job, every day, I laughed till I cried at least once or twice a day. And again, in hindsight, I realised how amazingly cathartic and amazing that is. These people were funny people. And we would just make each other laugh as much as we could. And then we'd sort of start to come up with as many ideas. And we go, okay, well, that idea's... You write that set of ads, and I'll write this set of ads, and I'll write this set of ads, and we'd go away, and then we'd bring the ads back, and we'd say, we'd read them out, and we'd go, no, tweak that a bit more. We'd go away, and we'd come back, and we'd go, you tried that a bit more. So it'd take a week to get a 30-second ad made. I had been coming from the environment where I was making 15 of these
15 a day.
And so when you apply, and so I had that go discipline to this environment, it was like, no, let's stop, let's deep dive, let's really deep dive. And it was challenging, it was really difficult. The other thing that they did really well, which I thought was fun and worked for the client, is they would present back 3 ideas, not 1 idea. And they would say, the client would say, we want an ad. It's like, cool, let's give them exactly what they want, a straight ad that's just a voiceover music. There you go. And then they would say, all right, what happens if we take a little step to the left? And then they would present that back, and let's take a big
jump.
And they would present that. And quite often, when we would present back to the client, we would present what they wanted, a little bit quirky, and the idea that we wanted to present. And that was on the understanding that if we presented that idea first,
Yeah,
they might go, whoa.
They'd jump at a million miles. And so did you accept that the majority of the time you were going to go and land in the middle, or that
and
by landing in the middle, the
majority
next
of the time,
round,
majority of the time it was either the middle or the far left one
Yeah,
is what we
yeah,
got.
yeah.
It did mean slightly more work, but it's a radio script. The lovely
Yeah.
thing about radio is that it's all theatre of the mind. You
yeah.
don't need to prepare anything. It's just words on a page.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until it's recorded.
Yeah. Yeah. I find it, look, over the years, we've done both. And I think depending on the market that you're in, one idea is often more efficient. But it's just I say that only because unless you have a budget which
Yeah.
covers the time to develop that deep dive stuff, really all you've got is one shot. So you've got to get as much information from the client as you can up front in the most open, transparent way, while very often they're still trying to safeguard what their budget is because they want to make sure that they're not spending the top. They want to get a deal.
It's two types of philosophies, isn't
Yeah,
it?
it
You're either
absolutely
into
is.
there's one idea, I'm only doing one thing,
Yeah.
and this is what you get,
Yeah.
this is what you're paying
Yeah.
me for, this is
Yeah.
my expertise,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
I'm going to present
Yeah.
three
Yeah.
and let them choose. And which is better?
I don't think it's which better. I think it's what are the commercial realities. you know?
Exactly. I don't think nowadays we have the luxury of coming up with three ideas and have people choose them. It's like, well, this is what it is. You don't like it, move on.
Yeah, because and how I don't know if you would find they would say, oh well, we really like 80% of this one, but just put 20% of that color into here.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, well, we're cool. We're getting closer.
Exactly.
But then they don't sometimes realize that that's an entirely different compartment of your brain.
Exactly. Is that just them trying to be involved, though, and trying to have a say and trying to put their mark on things?
I don't know. Or do they see it, but they're not brave enough to go the whole hog?
Exactly.
You know?
Well, sometimes we used to put what's called a purple orange into it. So you deliberately put a mistake in the ad, or you deliberately do something wrong, so that the client's going to say, that shouldn't be there, that should be.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So you're giving them something to correct because
Absolutely.
they have to feel like they have to do something.
We were making TV shows in the UK. There'd be a part in the episode that you really wanted to keep because somehow you sort of believed that there was some artistic integrity in what you were doing at that time. And then you went, there's absolutely no way they're going to keep this, heart jerking kind of moment. So let's put an absolute clanger directly in front of it or directly behind it, so that the most obvious thing is the thing that we get rid of. And we kept most of them. We kept most of the things that we wanted, but you put something really ugly in. But okay, that's great that you learn those skills to maneuver.
That's the agency side of things, learning those skills.
But imagine if you were just having those really transparent conversations up front and went, hey, we really believe that this is the thing that's going to help sell you or get more eyes or deliver you more value. From our combined decades of experience, we believe this thing is the best thing for what you're doing. And the client went, oh, well, let's go with it. Or,
you're the expert.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting conversation. I don't know.
Clients think obviously they think their brand matters, and I'm now on the other side being the client. So
and have to,
and it does. But the reality is people don't care.
Yeah.
But people used to say, I used to hear a lot in the industry, oh, people don't like ads. And I disagree with that entirely. I think people like ads. I think people are really into ads. People just don't like bad ads.
Yeah.
And if you get a really good ad, it creates a talking point.
Yeah, it does.
So, yes, there is such a thing as bad advertising. There is also such a thing as good advertising. You get a good ad, man, it cuts through.
Yeah. You put some money behind it so people can see it, or at least put it in places where people can see it. Hey, what was the very first? We did the jingle. Was that the very first piece of that's copywriting? What do you think was the first piece of marketing work that you put into the world? What was it? Do you remember? Do you remember a moment where you were like given a shot to do something?
I remember doing some copywriting for a brochure that was going into a ski magazine that was going to be sold to people in the North Island that were going to come down and go to like the Remarkables and Mount Hutt and those sorts of things. I remember writing some copy and coming up with some headlines, and I just wrote it into a Word document. And then I remember seeing it laid out, printed, and I was like, that's my words. And that was like, wow. Well, the first time you hear, the first time I heard my ad on the radio, and that wasn't voiced by me, that was voiced by a professional.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, wow. You know, that's mind-blowing.
Yeah, it is. It is. I remember the first photograph I took of a band, they were all in netball uniforms, men and women. There were 5 of them, I think, in a spa pool.
What band was that?
Ed Music. And
what genre?
Oh, God. Electronic pop.
How do they go? I did the jingle, mate. You've got to do at least a verse.
I actually can't remember a single. We'll
how
Google
convenient.
it. How convenient. Yeah, how convenient. And I remember seeing them in Rip It Up magazine. And I went, oh, shit.
Wow.
Fuck. That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't even really fully understand what the settings on that camera did. But I got away with it.
Yeah.
And the composition was great and the timing was great. And I remember standing there for about 2 hours on Sunset at one of the bandmates' parents' house on a hill with a spa pool. And shit, it was great. It was a wonderful moment. I wish everybody has that moment.
It's when I finished broadcasting school and I came back, I did marketing and bits and pieces. I used to talk to the broadcasting school, I'd talk to the final year students, and I used to really enjoy it because I could just see myself and all these kids that are about to go out into the world. And they used to say, well, I used to say to them, who here is a broadcaster? And 1 or 2 people would put their hand up. And I would, in a dramatic style, throw down my notes and they'd say, what are you waiting for? Are you waiting for a piece of paper from this place to say, congratulations, you are a broadcaster, now go forth and make stuff? You know, we live in a world now where anyone can create a podcast, where anyone can become a video star, where anyone can become a copywriter, where anyone can create whatever they want. And don't wait for permission to do that. Just do that now.
Just do it.
Create that now. And I said it with my son. He's made his own YouTube channel playing guitar, doing his thing. It's brilliant. He's doing that. But that opportunity never existed. God, I sound so old. Back in my day, you had to have
How old is he, though?
He's 11.
Yeah. So it didn't exist.
No.
It didn't exist.
It really didn't.
Yeah.
You had to have a medium and you had to have a job. You had to work
Yep.
on that medium. And
Yep.
you know, if you were lucky, you kind of got through it. Now it's all there. You
Yep.
know? And if anything, it just means that I need to get off my ass and do my own version of it.
Be inspired by him.
Yeah, but we have these tools that we can do literally anything with. You know, we have mobile phones that, you know, that's got more power in it that, you know, that sent men to the moon, and all we do is watch videos of cats and do doom scrolling. It's
it's mind blowing.
embarrassing.
What is it that you want to get out of the work that you do? Because now you're back, your client side. You have been for 5 years. You said so. You did a spell consulting.
I did 5 years consulting. I did 5 years consulting. Before that, I did a degree when I came back from London, an MBA.
Yeah.
And then had a family and worked as a consultant for a while, which was great. And I always positioned myself as working on the marketing side of things. I felt like I'd done the advertising side of things, and the advertising industry had changed wildly. And I wanted to, as one of my clients put back in the day, I wanted to be the bat instead of the ball. And there's some advantages of doing that. Slightly, to some degree, less creative. But because I understand the creative process, I think there are still opportunities to be creative there.
But I think don't sell it short also, because I think by understanding how it works, the preparing the environment for creativity to thrive. Sometimes people get attracted by the creative part only to find out that they want to build better systems in order for that creative bit to happen. you know. So I wonder if maybe that's the thing. You know, as we get a little bit older, it's more important to create the environment for those good things to happen rather than us.
Exactly. You want to get the most from your creative supplier, if you like. And I often find that as a marketer sitting on the other side, if anything, you want to be pulling them back. You never want to be pushing them. You never want to say, hey, this is not creative enough. You need to keep going. That's a bad situation to be in. And if you're ever in that situation, to me, I think you need to find someone else. Yeah. You really, as a marketer, go and actually bring it back and let's go ahead. You shouldn't be needing to push people because it's the creative's job to push you.
Yeah.
You've just got to know where your boundaries are, where they lie, what your values are, what your brand is, and know where the sweet spot is.
Yeah. Yeah. And so what do you want to do then? What do you want to do in your work?
At the moment?
Yeah. What is important to you?
Well, my role is slightly different now. As well as doing the marketing, I have a team, and focusing on the leadership style of things is quite new. It feels very grown up, and it does. Yeah. It does.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're a junior creative or I was just the person that just came up with the crazy ideas. Now I'm responsible for leading a team. You know, I'm also a parent and a homeowner, so it's all of a sudden, I wake up. I'm 50 next month. It feels everything feels
real.
Yeah. It's quite confrontational, Tim. I'm not sure how I feel about this. But leadership and being able to impress upon people a way of behaving and a way of learning is quite good. And there's nothing better, really, and you see it with your kids. If you teach them something and then they do it and they do a great job, you think, that's awesome. If you can impart your knowledge and you can do that to your colleagues and co-workers, you can share something, encourage, inspire in other people, whatever that may be, that's amazing. And if it's for the benefit of the company overall, then brilliant.
What about that then? The generational expectations, the changes in expectations, or different technologies, or both with staff, clients, colleagues, whatever it is. How do you manage that? Because you'll probably. I have absolutely no idea what your channel mix is, but there'll be more and more pressure for TikTok, and then in 2 years' time there'll be pressure for the next thing, and then so it's this never-ending cycle of continuing to produce content in order to satisfy sort of the status quo. How do you balance that? Because there'll be people internally also who don't give a shit about your Facebook page, which has worked really well to drive brand awareness and engagement. But they don't know what Facebook is. So
it's always a challenge. I mean, and that's one of the hardest things I think about marketing in general. And one of the most frustrating things I find is that when you work in marketing, everyone in the company is a marketer. And it's like me doing my work and then I put it on display and then the whole company looks at it and gives me their opinion, warranted or not. And some of it's, if there's anything wrong, I hear about it. And if it's great, the best that I'll get is, I saw that the other day. I saw what you did. Yeah. And there's no thing. And that's not necessarily synonymous to where I'm working at the moment. That's just in general across the way. Marketers have their work exposed and viewed at and critiqued by everyone. Yep. It's like when you're working on the radio. If you do an amazing voice break and you bring the music up in time and you get a thing, nothing happens. If you accidentally slip up, music comes in a little bit late, the boss is on the phone. What are you doing that for? Just
we had dead air for 10 seconds.
Exactly, or whatever. You stuff up, everyone knows about it.
Yeah.
You do a brilliant, nothing happens. And it's very difficult to... Radio is maybe slightly different. In the world of marketing today, your work is exposed by everyone, and everyone has a say, but often it comes down to the fact that we are not target market.
Yeah.
We are the voice of the customer.
Yes.
And quite often that person that's over there is not target market. She is not the audience person. They're not the person we're trying to
100%.
engage. Quite often they're the person that is the most vocal and opinionated.
Right.
We really need to be on this, or we really should be doing this. And it's like, cool, thanks for your input. But no, we're going to stick with this. We're going to hold the line.
Yeah. How important are customer insight? How much is R&D How much is that research piece important? Are you going out to market often, or is it just one of the many tools, or?
Knowing what the customer thinks and what the customer wants is absolutely critical, 100%. And you can do that by talking to them, understanding them more, but knowing the customer is everything, absolutely everything. And 9 times out of 10, it's just about sitting down and talking with them.
Yep.
You're talking to them about your product, service, whatever. It's just having the customer front and centre. And I think that's the role of marketing in the company. They are the voice of the customer in all the meetings. You've got engineering there, you've got finance, you've got IT, sales. The voice of the customer has to be represented by marketing.
You are selling, at the moment, you're with TASKA, prosthetic hands?
Myoelectric multi-articulating prosthetic hands, yes. TASKAprosthetics.com. Check it out.
So we're talking about a medical device.
Class 1 medical device.
Which is not subsidised in New Zealand, which is quite expensive I'm sure for what it is, it's incredibly good value for money. They're incredible pieces of engineering.
So not subsidised. It can be paid for through ACC. But
what I'm trying to get at is that most of your customers are offshore.
Yes.
It's easier for your offshore customers to access either the finance or I don't know, the ins and outs of it. So that means that you've got to be on the road quite a bit. You're traveling internationally to go and talk to those markets. How do you, because I imagine an Austrian client and a client in Houston, Texas are quite different, right? But there must be similarities, So
apart from the accent.
Apart from the accent, How do you talk to them? How do you find those commonalities? Is it challenging? Is it any more challenging than any other market, or is it just...
For us, it's a little bit different. We've got some clients around the world, but in the US and Germany, for example, which are 2 of our biggest markets, we have a distributor in the US and we go direct into Germany. And getting up close and talking to these people, the customers, the prosthetists, is absolutely everything. And you just need to build those relationships and get up close and talk to people. And ultimately the customer as well. I think what makes, when I say the customer, I mean the user in that case. I think what makes TASKA quite interesting is that on the one hand, it's, pardon the pun, a class 1 medical device, and we are talking to medical professionals, and we need to appeal to them. There's a tremendous amount of regulatory requirements, and it's a class 1 medical device. You're talking to prosthetists and surgeons and those sorts of things, But on the other hand, we've got to appeal to users, someone who's just lost a limb, or the family of someone who's just lost a limb, or the spouse, and so there's a little bit of a consumer aspect to it as well. And for me, that's quite interesting. So we've got this traditional, quite conservative approach because we're a class 1 medical device, but then we've also got this consumer side of things, and we can have a little bit of fun, sort of play around with that. And I think it's that duality for me makes things quite interesting. Ultimately, it comes down to understanding who the customer is, what their needs are, what their drivers are, what they want to do. And for the CPO, the prosthetist, that's one thing, and for the user, it's something else. For us, having a device that doesn't break, that's waterproof, and that's easy to use is absolutely critical. And that's one of the great things about the TASKA hand, is that the product is incredibly reliable and waterproof and easy to use. I was the first device that was waterproof without a glove. It's still it's an amazing success story. A Kiwi guy, Matt Jury, who's still involved with the company, invented this, and sold it to everyone around the world.
But then you've got prosthetists who need it to work with whatever, as you say, regulatory and compliance-based legislation.
It needs to work with
and
their
you've got-
funding systems,
Yeah.
and they need to be able to get So there's a whole nother area of
So in a way, in that regard, you're actually talking to the CIOs or the CFOs rather than the prosthetists, but they have to recommend it into their. Is that true? There's a sort of
no. It's more the if you're a patient and you go see your doctor and the doctor prescribes you something because you've got a sore shoulder, you might not know the brand of the treatment of what you need.
sure.
You they just write out what it is and you go get it from
the script.
the pharmacy.
Yeah.
With getting a hand, it's slightly different. You get a reference from your GP to go see your specialist, the prosthetist, and then if you request a TASKA hand, that can be one of the hands that you can try, and then it all has to work within the funding system of the respective countries.
So it's B2B plus B2C.
It's a bit of everything, and I think that's what makes it interesting. And I think the other thing about TASKA is that you take the world of medical devices, where O&P, orthotics and prosthetics, which is about this much. So let's expand that out. Where prosthetics, which in the world of O&P is actually about this much, and we're upper limb prosthetics, which is about 10 to 15%. And in the world of upper limb prosthetics, we're myoelectric multi-articulating prosthetics, which is so we're a niche of a niche of a niche of a niche. We're very, very narrowly targeted, and that makes us highly specialised in a highly unique environment, which I find fascinating.
Yeah. And then you just have to tell the story. So piece of cake.
Yeah, piece of cake. Yeah, no worries.
What's changed between when you started and now? What's changed in the world of marketing? So if you were to take all of your experience over the last 15 years or so that you've been working,
20, yeah, yep,
50 next month. No, if you were to take that, what's really changed? Because we can talk about channels to market, we can talk about the rise of digital, we can talk about all that kind of stuff. What do you think's actually changed, or are we still exactly the same? We're just a bit more distracted. What do you think it is?
Is digital marketing, or is it just marketing?
I think it's just marketing.
It's the same thing. We're kind of splitting hairs. It's at the end of the day, you've got a message, you've got an audience, you've got a product, you've got a channel to reach them. There are more options, but the fundamentals remain the same. You've got to have a great product. You've got to have at a good price. You've got to make it appealing. And you can be philosophical about that. And on the one hand, nothing's changed. It's all about the principles of what it is. On the other hand, man, things are way different. I think people's time and choice as a consumer is way more varied.
Mm-hmm.
I remember back in the day, there was like the newspaper. There were multiple newspapers to choose from. There were 2 television channels. There were a handful of radio stations, and they were very traditional.
Mm-hmm.
And there was web online. That was it. But now there's just endless choices of what you do. And I think an interesting thing is, as a marketer now, is where do you want to place your bet? Where do you want to put your money? Mm-hmm. And are you going to go for digital? Okay, you're going to go for digital. Well, which part of digital are you going to go for? The finding bit? Are you going to go for the advertising bit on your site? Get your site front and center? Are you going to go for promoting? So it kind of comes down to knowing your marketing funnel, and knowing which areas you want to start pushing. Do you want people just to be aware of you? Do you want people to actually convert? Mm-hmm. Whatever you want to do. Generally, I think, and this is my philosophy, if you've got something at every part of the marketing funnel, awareness, interest, consideration, purchase, loyalty, if you've got some form of marketing activity at every point, you're doing pretty good. The choice, though, of where you put your money is a lot more difficult, I think, because there are so many more options. I think that at the end of the day, connecting with people and connecting face-to-face is ideal for what we do. So, for example, going to events, talking to a prosthetist at an event is amazing, because you can spend a bit of time with them, you can meet with them afterwards, you can build a relationship. But again, this is just for the discipline that I'm in because we're a niche of a niche of a niche,
Yep. Yep.
So it works that way.
It works. Yeah.
So events, events have been, I've had trade shows and trade fairs for years, and that's still a pretty viable way of reaching people. Now there's so many of them, there's so many more of them. You've got to start being a little bit picky as to
more selective.
Which ones you go
One
to.
of the things that we found one of our clients was in trade shows, and yes, they spent a bit of money to be seen, and they had a good site and all the rest of it, good giveaways and what have you. But my concern was probably that they were there because they had always been there, not because they were measuring the effect. And actually, I would say that there was, if anything, it was a loss leader to make sure that their competitors knew that they were still in the game rather than, so it was more an ego kind of a thing.
Yeah. I've heard a lot of people say that because it's a question I ask colleagues and competitors and stuff when I'm at these events. How do you measure this? How do you know if it's been successful or not? Because you're right, some people can spend a fortune on these events, and some do. How do you measure it? And quite often the answer I get as well, it's actually the cost of not being there is more.
Yeah.
If we're not here, it's it would make a big difference. But I think you've got to understand why you're at that event, and you've got to understand why you're at that event and what you're seeking to get out of that particular event, because events are different around the world. I know, for example, that for us, we have an event that we go to in Australia, and it's very networking based, and it's like, it's just a glorified networking opportunity. A similar event held in Germany is not necessarily networking based. Networking opportunity is there, but it's great for showcasing new product.
Yeah.
And each different events have different purposes, and if you can align your product calendar with different events, so you can release product at different times, it can certainly work for you.
Yeah.
But again, that's just an opinion of one lens at the moment. In this, I'm throwing that caveat in because I used to be like I say, consultant, used to work across all industries, and now I'm just mindful that what works for one person is not necessarily going to work for another.
We're talking to you in the capacity which you exist in the world today.
I do
Mark.
exist in the world, yes.
So we're gonna stick with that. Hey, if you had a crystal ball and you were looking 3 to 5 years out, what do things look like?
For me, for marketing, for the world, is that just your open question?
It's an open question, yeah. There's no right or wrong. I mean, I will be judging you, but...
there's no right or wrong. It's definitely wrong.
It's definitely wrong.
I think we're just going to we're certainly going to see more of the same. I think things are just going to be amplified more. We're going to have more choices. There's YouTube, there's just going to be more videos on YouTube. There's more options. There's more screaming for people's attention. I think that's going to be absolutely huge. I think
more notifications on Outlook, more...
Yeah, exactly. Everything is just screaming for people's attention now, and I think we keep getting told, content is king, content is king. You've got to have good content. It's going to attract people. And where does that end? Do we just keep creating more content? More content, more content, more content. Eventually, you're not appealing. There is no such thing as mass media anymore. Well, some might argue that there is. But everything's about a narrow niche and a narrow target market, a target audience, and it's about choosing who you target, who you want to go after. I think spending a piece of media, I think spending a media dollar, I think spending money and knowing exactly where it's going to go and how effective it's going to be is becoming increasingly more difficult to justify. Yes, you can get there with clicks and you can measure how many clicks. But, you know, back in the day, do you remember when clicks were like, this got, 100 clicks. It's like, oh, wow. And it's got, 1,000 impressions. It's like, cool. Now you can get, several million impressions and nothing will happen.
Yep.
It's how do you make a difference and how do you cut through?
Well, I don't think more is more. I think better is more. I think that's the way that it's going, is my take on it anyway. And if you don't differentiate, if you don't stand out, if you don't take, the biggest risk is being the same, is being boring.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the biggest risk.
Yeah. You need to, and when I was copywriting back in the day, there was the philosophy around, and to go back even earlier, there was the philosophy around features and benefits, and you had to have features and benefits. And, so it's not enough to say, this vacuum cleaner is lighter. It's like, the benefit is that, it's lighter, but therefore it's easy to move around the house. That's the benefit. The benefit is I can lift it up easier. So what's the benefit of that? It's easily movable. Cool. That's the, sell the benefit, sell the sizzle, don't sell the sausage. I think the idea of having a USP, a unique selling proposition, and focus on what makes you different and unique is equally as important now. But honing in on that and absolutely driving into that and being able to get your USP across to your target audience is absolutely critical. What's your value proposition? What difference are you making in this person's world? And also ask yourself the question: why should they care? Why? What's in it for them? And we see this all the time, and I see it all the time. There'll be an ad on TV for a power company or you see something in a magazine, you go, oh yeah, cool, and you just flick the page, don't care.
Well, 95.5, right? There are only 5% of the market and who are ready to purchase your product or service at any one time. The other 95% it means nothing until they're in market. They're not looking at it.
That's right. But that
so make it remarkable.
Exactly. But that it's creating an impression in the back of your head. I remember back in the day, people used to say you need to hear a radio ad 4 times before it comes through, before you hear it. How many touch points do people need today before they will actually take it? Is it 8 to 12?
Yeah. Yeah.
There you go.
Yeah, it's nuts. What do you think? Also, this is a slightly off piste. That was
Piste.
Peculiar
So
all
nice.
of a sudden. Okay, so where are we? We're post-COVID, mid or at the tail end of recession, one hopes. People are sitting on their hands a little bit. They're unsure. There isn't sort of confidence in the market as to whether we should really be doing this or that or the next thing. When does that shift? How does that shift?
When you say people are sitting on their hands, do you mean that the economy is just a bit slow?
Yeah.
We're going through a hell of a recession at the moment, and with Trump just gotten in, and I think we're going to see the effects of that ripple through. Interest rates are going to be coming down, but that means everything's going to be slowing down a bit. And I think we've just got to ride it out. I'm not one to commentate economically or politically on those sorts of things, but I think we just have to ride it out. But these things are cyclical, Charlie Tremendous Jones said, the only thing that's going to happen to you in the next 10 years, the difference between the person you are now and the person you are in 10 years, it's the people you meet and the books you read. And whilst that's not necessarily true all of the time, I like the sentiment of that it's on you to meet lots of people and read lots of interesting books and learn as much as you can. And because that is really going to be the major difference between you and 10 years from now. So I think in the future, there'll still be content out there. There'll just be a lot more of it. And I think we're going to have to be more selective. And I think people will end up drifting towards the curators of that content now. And we're starting to see that now already. Rather than trying to consume everything myself, rather for me trying to consume all this new music that's out there, I'll often go to some journalists or key websites that have new music, and I'll go, right, and I'm going through their filter of trying to get access to all this stuff.
They've looked at all the leads.
They have, and they've made a call, and I respect their opinion, and I trust their opinion, so therefore I'm going to go with that.
Yeah.
So we're going to see, but again, we're going to see more of those. So what happens when there's a shit ton of those?
Yeah.
What do people do then? It's what's the end to all this content? Are we? I don't know.
Thank you, Mark.
Make a soundbite out of that.
Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate you. Full stop. Thanks for listening, team. For more on how we work or how we can help your business do better, get in touch at ruffles.co.nz. See you on the next one.